Well, hello again from here inside St James's Park, where today Eddie Howe asked for a response from his players. Did he get one? Absolutely. Listen, I want to see a bigger body of evidence than one game before I declare that Newcastle United are back and that intensity is once again their identity. But wow, today did they respond to that call from Eddie Howe in his press conference yesterday, where I thought the manager gave a fantastic performance after a difficult week of scrutiny for a performance on the pitch down in Fulham. I thought Eddie was fantastic yesterday off it in terms of what he said to us and the message it sent to his players and what he'd said to his players during the week. Now, one of the most important games of Newcastle's season, on reflection, could be the one down at Wimbledon that was postponed on Tuesday night, because that allowed Eddie and his players a full week to air some home truths. As he said, they've watched the Fulham game back more than any other they've previously done. And from those home truths came a performance of honesty, something we haven't seen so far this season from Newcastle in terms of those qualities that you identify as instantly recognisable with an Eddie Howe team and with this group of players. It was there and it was evident from the off. Yes, the intensity was back, and this wasn't against any team. This was against Manchester City. Now the challenge is to provide this consistently over a longer period of time, but it's a start. It is proof, it is encouragement that yes, it does still exist there within them. The lights hadn't gone out. There weren't wider, deep-rooted problems that meant this team was over the hill and it was never going to get back to where it could be. Well, no, that there today proved that they are capable. And yes, as Eddie said to us yesterday, that sometimes it can take an afternoon as bad as Fulham for something healthy to come from it. Well, it did today. From the start, it was evident inside, I was going to say the first 5 minutes, it was evident inside the first 30 seconds even that Newcastle were going to get in the faces of Manchester City. They were the better team. And in a strange way, do you know what? The result wasn't academic today. The result is always important. But for me, the performance and the response was something which I thought was going to be more informative. Newcastle could have played poorly and nicked a point there in the last minute. It would have been entirely different to what we're reflecting on now. Because even if Manchester City, even if Nick Pope doesn't save that brilliant volley from Bernardo Silva there in the 94th minute and doesn't push it over the bar, and Newcastle are on the end of a cruel, undeserved defeat, I still would have stood here now and walked up and down this terrace reflecting on the positives and reflecting on a performance that I thought was greatly reassuring. After all the criticism of the past week, and going back further than that, the past week wasn't just in response to Fulham, it was in response to the previous 5 games where I used that phrase. Newcastle were unrecognisable. The patterns, the partnerships, everything, go through, all of the qualities, everything that made Newcastle so good under the near 3 years under Eddie Howe, none of that was evident during the opening weeks of the season. Eddie Howe admitted it as much himself. Yesterday he was very honest about that, and in turn he was very honest with his players this week, and it has taken that to bring about that display there today and just to go through it. And Eddie said something crucial to us yesterday, I thought, when he said, you talk about the collective, that collective malaise I've mentioned. He said, well, the collective doesn't stand the chance of individuals within it aren't performing to their best. And you had there today, he called on big players to step up. And I think, without mentioning names, I think what he was referring to was the likes of Bruno, was the likes of Anthony Gordon, or the likes of Joe Linton. And they did there today, certainly in the case of Bruno, who produced his best performance by an absolute distance of the season there today. Anthony Gordon played through the middle as a makeshift centre forward. And do you know what? I think if Alexander Isak plays that game there, I think Newcastle perhaps wins. So let's talk through the reasons as to why I think that. Like I say, they start well on the front foot. And as much as I came here expecting Newcastle to play predominantly on the break and sit in and almost like a Rafa type performance, it wasn't really. There was actually spells in the first half when Newcastle were playing this hybrid of, yes, on the break with a deep line, back line, but they had spells where they had possession and they had territory, but without creating those chances. And that was almost the frustration and the fear you had as you went through the game. I was sat with my colleague Jack Gorn there, who covers Manchester City for the Mail, and halfway through the first half we sort of said the little row where we were, it was 0-0 and Newcastle were on top, and we said, yeah, this finishes 2-0 to Manchester City. They'd seen that sort of script before, but not so. We were wrong, and now Manchester City took the lead. And the goal came about, and this is a frustration, this is a point of criticism. The goal came about on 33 minutes, because I've just looked at my monitor there, my notes. 33 minutes, Newcastle press and harry City out of the ball up on the left wing there. shooting towards the Gallagher end. It's brilliant. Wins a cheer from the crowd. Anthony Gordon gets the ball back. He gives it to Joe Linton. And Joe Linton gives a horribly sloppy pass. Bruno subsequently gets booked from. Newcastle lose possession. Eddie Howe just in front of us, spins on his heels. He's furious. Within 90 seconds, City have scored. Now, the goal itself, it was switched out wide to Jack Grealish. Jack Grealish, a player who I've watched for England and someone who I loved and admired. Now, I don't think a great deal of, to be honest with you. For once, he decides to dribble. He reverts to the old Jack Grealish, uses that quick little double touch to get away from Kieran Trippier, who I thought had a good game, by the way. Keeping him in the team and recalling him last week and keeping faith in him this week is the right decision. He's got to stay there now. He gets away from Trippier into the box to Gvardiol, and Dan Burn probably didn't cover himself in glory, even though he did recover. Had a fantastic afternoon against Erling Haaland. He wasn't great for the goal, bottom corner. And from that point on, you think, well, okay, is this now, do Manchester City just exert their expected superiority? Does that knock Newcastle after that enterprising start? But no, it didn't really. Yes, there were one or two little moments at 1-0 there where Manchester City squandered sort of, one brilliant chance with Gundogan before half-time when Nick Pope gifts him the ball, and then one or two other little half chances. But no, Newcastle came out for the second half and they went at it again and they went after them. And they get the equaliser deservedly. Bruno Guimaraes, brilliant through ball, springs Anthony Gordon clear. There's some controversy, isn't it? Penalty, is it not a penalty? Well, yeah, it's a penalty. He touches him, he catches him, doesn't he? I've only seen one replay there in the press box, but for me, would you call it soft? I saw some did. It's just a penalty. Come on, move on. And Gordon steps up and puts it away then. From that point, well, which way is the game going to go? And this is what I say about if Isak was on the pitch, because there's one instance in the second half there. It's 1-1. Jacob Murphy gets away down the right and he puts it through the box and it just goes all the way through the area, no takers. At times during that period I mentioned in the first half, as much as Newcastle were playing well, did they ever really have chances or look like creating clear-cut chances, let alone scoring a goal? Well, probably not, and that comes back to Isak not being there, although as Chris Waff, one of my colleagues, just sent me downstairs there, don't forget they've played like that with Isak this season in the team and haven't looked like scoring, which I thought was a fair point. But then there's another one in the second half where I think it's Murphy puts the cross in and it's Fabian Schär on the end of it. And Jack Gordon, like I said, sat next to me, he said, what's your centre-half? What's Newcastle's centre-half doing up there? I said, well, because there's nobody else. 30 seconds earlier, Anthony Gordon went to get the ball off Kieran Trippier on halfway and he screamed at him, get away, get in the box, give us something to hit. So despite the loss of Isak, despite the difficulties of the opening 5 weeks of the season, the criticism of this week, all the noise off the pitch, for Newcastle to come out there and play the way they did and marry it with a result, with a really positive result that might have been more, but for a little bit of better luck and certain personnel being there, I thought, hats off to them. Pass marks and positivity from me. I thought they were brilliant. And Eddie, just downstairs with us now there, he was fulsome in his praise in terms of the characteristics they showed. And he said it himself, being recognisable. And that is the big relief. And that is the big victory on the back of a draw for me there today. Now, in terms of the selection, I'd called in 2 videos this week for Eddie Howe just to play your best players, especially in midfield. Put those 3 in there, Joe Linton, Bruno and Tonali, and see how they fare. And they were good. I thought they were better than City's midfield. Now, was it at the very best it can be in terms of that functionality? Well, no, they're getting there, but it's certainly a start and it's certainly something worth persevering with. I'd keep those 3 in the middle going down to Everton next week. Now, one player who might not be there, I've already mentioned in this video, is Alexander Isak. I've just asked Eddie for a quick update and he said he won't play against Wimbledon on Tuesday and he remains a doubt for Everton next week. And just to don't make a negative from what should be a wholly positive reflection, but Isak not playing today, and he played at Fulham last week and I first reported that toe injury. Now, the arrival of James Bunce and players playing when they shouldn't and perhaps damaging their longer term health, isn't that what the arrival of Bunce and that new sort of cohesion and joined up thinking behind the scenes was meant to do away with? Now, listen, I think we probably need to give Isak a chance. If he only misses 1 game and comes back for Everton, then okay, but if he's missing for sort of 2 and 3 and then extends it in the national break, then questions need to be asked there, because that is the sort of thing Newcastle cannot afford. And isn't it, I touched on this in the video yesterday, isn't it ludicrous that they haven't got a centre forward there to come in today for such a big, brilliant game here with the weather. It was just the sort of day that was made for football. It was fantastic inside here today. But then you look at the team sheet beforehand and Isak isn't there. And I did radio, did Talk Sport and my WhatsApp voice note. I just can't see a way Newcastle can win this match without Isak in the team. I think that's 4 games now without Isak or Wilson starting since the start of last season. They've won none of them. So I was right, but I'll be honest, I probably expected a defeat too. So at least in that regard, I was wrong. In which players made that happen, onto the merit stars in ascending order? Well, one goes to, and I've wrestled with this with colleagues downstairs and friends on WhatsApp groups, and there's a lot of candidates here today. The 1 star, well, that goes to Anthony Gordon. Played in a different position. Was he at his very best? Did we see, trademark Anthony Gordon in terms of, getting round defenders and dribbling and everything else? Well, no, not really. It was a different type of game he was asked to produce, but wow, did he do it with the absolute fullest of hearts and just incredible endeavour. Yes, he did, and he's charging down goalkeepers and full-backs, and he puts himself in that position to spring clear and to cleverly play the offside trap off Kyle Walker for the goal, and then puts the penalty away as well. If after that was a pressure penalty, they all are, of course, but given it's against Manchester City, and if you miss, you might not get another chance because they weren't exactly carving clear-cut openings with it. For him to put that away, Anthony Gordon, 1 star. I did think when we saw the AG 10 More Flags presentation before the game that they had a tip-off, and Anthony Gordon was going to walk out with a pen and sign his contract there and then on the pitch. But Eddie's just said to us downstairs, again, Mail Sports story broken earlier in the week, he said the contract is close to being signed. 2 stars, well, they go to Lewis Hall. And it's in the context of Lewis Hall not having had the best of starts to a Newcastle career last season in particular, the start to this season. He's been in the team, he's been out the team, he's been on at half-time, he's been brought off at half-time. So for him to come in there today and against Manchester City as well, I just thought he was clever in that he just didn't expose himself. One criticism I've had of him is that he's been naive as a defender and finds himself in positions where he is exposed. Well, today he didn't. In some respects at times he had a quiet game, but isn't that good? Isn't that clever? Then when he had the ball, there was one incident in the second half where you thought, oh no, you're going to undo all that brilliant work where he gave a sloppy pass, and I saw Eddie sort of put his head in his hands. But, that was one slight blight on an otherwise very good, and crucially, guys, an encouraging performance. Newcastle need a left-back. They keep on signing them. They can't find one. It might just be Lewis Hall. And 3 stars, well, that goes to, and again, I think you're probably guessing at this point, but I want to give them to Bruno Guimaraes because last week I was critical of him after the game down to Fulham, entirely justifiably so. I didn't call for him to be dropped. I just posed the question, what is the answer? Do you drop him? Do you give him more games to get up to speed? Or you actually give him a rest, take him out the team? Well, I think the answer we found there today is keep him in the side. He's got to produce that again, because he can have a habit of raising himself at St James's, especially in that sort of environment. He does do that. So now go and produce it next week and the week after. But certainly today there, in isolation of this game, I thought he was very good. He plays the brilliant through ball for the goal. Perhaps a little lucky not to be sent off, but as I've just said to a colleague, at least he was getting close enough to get those fouls, those niggly challenges, those bookings, there was the tackles, all the rest of it. In recent weeks, he hasn't been getting close enough to his opponents. So he did that today, and I just thought he wasn't a 9 out of 10, wasn't even an 8.5 out of 10, but it was a solid 7.5, 8. And because they had that collectively all over the pitch, that is what was encouraging. It wasn't just one guy with one moment bailing them out, as has been the case so far this season. Everyone was at it to a man almost. And a special mention, I don't know how they've made it into the stars, but Dan Burn and Fabian Schär now. Did they have a particularly difficult afternoon up against Erling Haaland? But no, and that is also to their credit. Haaland's too big to put in your pocket, but they certainly smothered them with their black and white jerseys, didn't they? I thought they were very good. The mentions go on. Some of you might be saying Joe Linton, but I thought with Joe Linton, I thought there was a lot of good, but there was also a lot of bad at times as well, giving the ball away and just a lack of awareness. I still want to see an improvement from him. Harvey Barnes was quiet without being bad, just quieter. Jacob Murphy putting a brilliant shift down the right. I might as well go through the rest of them. I thought Trippier was good. And Tonali, Tonali had some lovely moments, but just need more of those moments over the course of a full 90 minutes, but a massively encouraging first start for him. So, guys, look at all those positives. So thoroughly enjoyable afternoon. I thought it was a good game. I thought it was an intriguing game as well. And that was Manchester City. Oh, wow, and right on cue there, guys. There's a rainbow. I don't know if it's captured. I picked up on camera there. I hope it does. And that just reflects the sunny mood here. The rainbow after what has been, a fairly stormy start to the season for Newcastle. But they're in a good place after this, I think. Encouraging, reassuring, allaying concerns that did rightly, justifiably exist. So that is probably where I'm going to finish this one. I'll give you one last little scan. You might capture the rainbow again, guys. But thank you so much for watching that video yesterday. So many viewers, such brilliant comments as well, and good, lively, healthy debate beneath the line. I'll be back on Monday where I'm up at the media centre talking to Eddie Howe ahead of that game against Wimbledon. In the meantime, please hit like, thanks, subscribe, all the rest of it, comment. You know, really do love the interaction. It's so pure, so honest, so genuine. It's really good to get involved with. I'll get through as many as I can, and I'm going to go for a pint now. Actually, one of these early kickoffs does afford you that little window before you get back and throw yourself into the bath and bedtime with the children. So yeah, wherever you're watching, guys, I hope you have a good Saturday night, and I dare say you'll be happier and a little more reassured again there after that performance. Okay, take care. Bye bye.